All right, welcome to another deep dive. This one, you guys sent us this court judgment, Uganda v. Geoffrey Kazinda. And it is fascinating stuff. It's got abuse of office, forgery, and a whole stash of sensitive government documents. But here's the thing. They weren't found in his office. They were found hidden away at his mother's house.
What's so great about having the actual judgment is we can get past just the news headlines
Yeah.
and really see how the judge reached the verdict.
Yeah, exactly. Like all the evidence and arguments and how the law actually works in practice. So let's start with who this guy is, Geoffrey Kazinda. The judgment calls him the principal accountant. That sounds pretty important.
Oh, yeah, he was basically in charge of every dollar that went through the office of the Prime Minister of Uganda. Like, he headed the accounts section, advised on all financial matters, oversaw payments, supervised all the staff, even had authority over the office's bank accounts.
Wow, that's a lot of responsibility and a lot of access to sensitive information and money, right? So what started this whole investigation?
Well, it all began when Kazinda went missing from work. He requested a few days off for medical reasons, which was initially approved, but weeks went by and he didn't return, and no one could reach him. His permanent secretary, Pius Bijaramana, kind of like the CEO of the office, he started getting suspicious and ended up reporting him to the police.
So it wasn't just a vacation gone wrong. What made this Bigaramana guy so suspicious?
There were some rumors going around about Kazinda having his driver take files out of the office.
Yeah.
And Biggie Ramada even went so far as to put an extra lock on Kazinda's office door.
Oh, wow. That's definitely not a good sign. So what did they do? Send a search party out to find him?
Well, Biggie Ramada wrote to the Inspector General of Police outlining his concerns. Specifically mentioned those rumors about the files being removed. And that led the police to search not only Kazinda's home, but also his mother's house, which was in the same compound.
Uh-huh. And that's where they found the hidden documents.
It's even crazier than that. They found a locked room in the mother's house.
Yeah.
Forced it open. And found a ton of government documents. Security papers, cash withdrawal authorization forms, even a laptop. But get this. The room actually belonged to Kazinda's nephew, who was away at the time.
So we've got a missing accountant, sensitive government documents stashed in a nephew's room, and a permanent secretary who thinks something shady is going on. This is like a movie or something.
And it gets even better. The investigators brought in a handwriting expert to examine the signatures on those documents, especially the ones supposed to be from Permanent Secretary Bijarimana. And guess what? They were forgeries.
Wait a minute. So not only were these documents in the wrong place, but they were also forged? How did they know for sure the signatures were fake?
Well, you know, you can have two paintings that look almost identical, but one is a fake. The handwriting expert looked for tiny differences, like in how the letters were shaped, the flow of the writing, even the pressure used. All those little details revealed the signatures weren't real.
That's incredible how much a signature can tell you. But I'm still confused. If they found the documents in the nephew's room, how can they say Kazinda was responsible?
That's where this idea of constructive possession comes in. It basically means you don't have to physically have something on you to be in possession of it. Like if you hide a treasure chest in your friend's attic, you don't physically have it, but you know where it is and you have the key. So legally, you still possess that treasure.
Oh, I see what you mean. So how did they prove Kazinda had that kind of control over those documents?
They started by showing how close he was to his mother and nephew. Witnesses said he was the main financial supporter of the whole household. His mom had even moved in with him after their father died. She relied on him for everything, both money and emotional support.
So even though he didn't live there full time, he was basically the head of the house.
Right, and on top of that, they found personal letters addressed to Kazinda among those government documents. So that tied him directly to that room. And most importantly, Kazinda's own brother testified that he was the only live person in the house who worked at the office of the Prime Minister.
Wow, it sounds like they're building a pretty solid case against him. But what were the actual charges?
Well, that's where it gets even more interesting. We've got abuse of office and forgery. And those are just the beginning.
Okay, so Kazinda's in big trouble, right? Linked to these government documents, forged signatures, the whole 9 yards. What exactly did they charge him with?
Well, one of the biggest charges was abuse of office, basically using his position for personal gain or to harm his employer, in this case, the Ugandan government.
Abuse of office. That sounds kind of vague, doesn't it? Like, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so the judgment really focuses on this idea of an arbitrary act, basically doing something without any justification, going beyond your authority and breaking the rules.
Okay, so like taking confidential files home just because you feel like it, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in this case, the judge ruled that Kazinda had no valid reason to take those documents out of the office, let alone keep them at his mom's house, where they could easily be compromised.
And we're talking about some pretty important stuff, right? Like those security papers and cash withdrawal
Oh,
form.
absolutely. These are key documents for handling public funds, especially the money meant for disaster relief. By taking them out of the office, he put those funds at risk.
Yikes, that's a big deal. So the abuse of office charge seems pretty straightforward. What about those forgery charges? 26 counts, right?
Yeah, 26 separate counts of forgery, all related to Kazinda faking the permanent secretary's signature on different documents. It wasn't just a one-time thing. It points to a pattern of deception.
Did the judge go through every single count?
Every single one. The judgment lays out each count in detail, the specific document, the evidence of the forgery. For instance, there's one count about a security paper for a foreign exchange request, $37,500.
I vaguely remember seeing a photo of a bunch of documents scattered on a bed in the judgment. Was that one of them?
Yep, that exact document. Just another piece of the puzzle.
So they used witness testimony, handwriting analysis, even photos. They really built a strong case. What did Kazinda say about all of this? How did he defend himself?
Well, at first he just denied everything, said he didn't know anything about the documents, claimed they weren't his.
So he tried to play the I don't know nothing card. Did that work?
Not really. The judge didn't buy it, especially with all the evidence tying him to those documents.
Makes sense. So forgery, we got that. But then there's this other charge, making documents without authority. What's the difference between that and forgery?
Good question. This one's about a specific security paper asking for money to be transferred for relief food suppliers. Kazinda signed it, but he also added 2 suppliers that weren't on the original list.
And I bet he forged the permanent secretary's signature too, right?
You know it. Tried to make it all look official.
Wow, talk about bold.
Uh.
So he adds these suppliers without permission, then tries to cover it up with a fake signature. What happened then?
Well, the permanent secretary testified that he never approved those additions. So that sealed the deal on the making a document without authority charge. But wait, there's more. We've still got unlawful possession of government stores to unpack.
That one always confuses me. How are documents government stores? It sounds like they're talking about office supplies.
It does sound strange, but stores basically means anything that belongs to the government. So in this case, those security papers, cash withdrawal forms, because of what they are and what they're used for, they're considered government property. Doesn't matter if they have a label on them or not.
So just taking them from the office was a crime.
Well, it wasn't just taking them, it was taking them, hiding them, and then not being able to explain why he had them. It all looked very suspicious.
Okay, that makes more sense. The intent was clearly there. So let's recap. Abuse of office, tons of forgery charges, making documents without authority, and unlawful possession of government stores. Sounds like they threw the book at him. What happened next?
Well, the judge had to decide on a sentence. And it wasn't a slap on the wrist. He considered how serious these offenses were, the damage to the office of the Prime Minister's reputation, the impact on those crucial disaster relief efforts.
And the fact that he violated the public's trust, right?
Exactly. This wasn't just a paperwork mistake. It was about someone in a position of power breaking the law and potentially harming a lot of people.
So what did the judge decide?
5 years in prison. It's a long time. And while the judge did take into account that this was Kazinda's first offense, his family situation, even his remorse, ultimately, a prison sentence was necessary to reflect the gravity of the crimes.
5 years is serious. It really sends a message about accountability, especially for those handling public funds.
Definitely. This was about protecting the government, making sure public resources are used properly, and making sure people can trust their leaders.
This whole case has been mind-blowing. It started with a court judgment, and now we're talking about accountability, corruption, the importance of trust.
It's amazing how one document can tell us so much about a whole society and its problems.
It makes you wonder, how did this happen in the first place? What allowed someone to operate this way for so long without anyone noticing?
That's the question, isn't it? This case isn't just about one person's actions. It makes you think about the systems that are supposed to prevent this kind of thing, the checks and balances, and whether they're really working.
It's like if someone had spoken up sooner, maybe all of this could have been avoided.
Exactly. Transparency is key, not just in government, but in any organization.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, sunlight is the best disinfectant.
And what about the people who are supposed to benefit from those public funds, especially the disaster relief money? Their needs might have been ignored because of this.
That's the real tragedy here.
Yeah.
This case shows the real impact of corruption. It hurts real people.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. We began with a court judgment, and look where we are now, talking about accountability, systemic issues, and why public trust is so important.
It shows you how powerful one document can be, how much it can reveal about a whole society, its legal system, the problems it faces.
It reminds us that we can't just sit back and expect laws and institutions to prevent this kind of thing. We all have a responsibility to hold people accountable, demand transparency, and fight for ethical behavior.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And while this particular case happened in Uganda, the lessons apply everywhere. It's a wake-up call for all of us.
Thank you for taking us through this case. It's been fascinating and thought-provoking.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for sending us this incredible court judgment. Hopefully you found this deep dive as interesting as we did. Keep those deep dives coming. This whole thing, it really makes you think. Like, how could this happen? How could someone get away with this for so long?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not just about Kazinda. It's about the whole system.
Right, like, were there any red flags? Did anyone try to stop him?
That's what makes this case so interesting. It raises questions about accountability.
And what about whistleblowers? Are there systems in place to encourage people to speak up?
Exactly. And what about internal controls? Checks and balances?
Yeah, all those things we hope are working to prevent this kind of thing. If someone had caught him earlier.
Oh, definitely. The damage could have been so much less.
It's like that saying, right? Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Transparency is key. Absolutely.
Not just in government, but in any organization, really.
Anywhere where people have power.
And what about the people who were supposed to benefit from those funds, especially the disaster relief money? Think about the impact this had on real people.
That's the real tragedy here. Corruption hurts real people.
This deep dive, it's been amazing. We started with just this court judgment, and now we're talking about all these bigger issues.
Accountability, systemic issues, public trust.
It's incredible what you can learn from just one document.
Yeah, it really gives you a glimpse into a whole society, its legal system, the challenges it faces.
It reminds us that we can't just rely on laws and institutions.
Right, we have the active participants.
We have to hold people accountable, demand transparency.
Advocate for ethical behavior.
This case may have been in Uganda, but the lessons are universal.
They really are.
It's a call to action for all of us, no matter where we live or work.
Well, thank you so much for guiding us through all of this. This has been a truly fascinating deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for sending us this incredible case. We hope you found it as thought-provoking as we did. And remember, keep those deep dives coming.